Strengthen your understanding of governance and policy design. The 12-week graduate course in public policy begins 10th January 2026. Apply by 30th November 2025 to avail a 10% early bird scholarship.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of All Things Policy. Last month, the government proposed that ministry is prepared to launch behavior change campaigns to instill civic sense and a sense of ownership among citizens for public assets like public spaces, transport, and infrastructure. The cabinet secretary has reportedly quoted saying that this needs to become a people's movement, similar to the Swachh Bharat campaign from some years back. While this doesn't absolve the government from actions on things that the state is responsible for and which is under the state's gamut, there is a case for India for an increased sense of civic sense and purpose, especially in comparison to other comparable societies and economies. This brings us to our topic for today, where I'll be in conversation with Sowmya, who is the CEO of Takshashila, on changemaking. In this call, we hope to explore what it takes for change-making to happen on ground, some common myths, tools, and challenges. Hi, Sowmya.
Hi, Shreya. Thanks for having me on this.
It's so nice to have you here, Sowmya. For everyone else, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Shreya. I'm a program manager at the Takshashila Institution. So, Sowmya, in a society as diverse as ours, and with the structural and societal problems that we have, they're pretty well known. It's safe to say that many of us identify with the need and urge to affect change, at least as an idea and as an aspiration as well. Increasingly, we see a burst of, young entrepreneurial drive in areas of work that have a social focus or are improving our baselines across indicators and categories. What is your take on these trends that we're seeing around us?
So I think the community spirit is actually growing in a very beautiful way. In fact, you would see or rather hear also, right? A lot of people are building communities which are very niche. It could be support groups for something that they're dealing with. It could be online or offline in terms of format also. But a lot of people are investing in building communities that they care about, right? So urban spaces are seeing communities like the Cubbon Reads, where people just to get together on a morning at Cubbon Park to read, right? And sometimes there's no interaction also because the reading time is just yours. And you just have a bunch of people who care about it, on the lawn around. And I think that's good inspiration to say this has to stay, this has to kind of, as much as I think people think reading is an habit that's almost dying, I think these little communities give you that strength to think that, hey, this can be worked out, right? And Shreya, you also hear us talking in the office, right? A lot of times we're talking about, funny things or rather strange stuff that happens in apartments. And I feel that's such a beautiful community to kind of grow, because at least you don't have to go through the challenge of dealing with traffic to put something together for community, which is already close in terms of proximity. So today, I would say a lot of spaces have evolved, and it kinds of anchors very specific issues sometimes that they want to solve for. Sometimes I think it's not even about problem solving. It's just knowing that, oh, there are many more people dealing with this and they care about it. So you take small steps to kind of better the situation. The enthusiasts of Bangalore who fixed the lakes here were just people who were like-minded, had residential apartments right next to a lake, and they decided that we have to build a community which cares about the upkeep and the daily maintenance of it. And I think, we are sorted as a city. So the externalities of having a community, it's so underrated, I would say, in terms of just having a bunch of people coming together to discuss. And a lot of times I know there are specific groups which have deliverables by the end of it. There are a lot of people who just want to talk it out, so you feel safe in that space, and it anchors the spirit of community which is there no matter what, right? I mean, this is not something that people are thinking. Of course there are communities where you have like a paid system to it, but a lot of it is purely driven with passion and interest. So I know some could monetize it, and there's nothing wrong in that, but building communities has become a thing, and it's across age groups.
And that's one of the first things you think about, right? Like you said, as soon as you see something new that's cropped up, like a small community, even Cubbon Reads, for example, or something that's community based, the thought that often comes is, oh yes, this should exist. And so you're also accepting that, oh, this was a need that we hadn't met for a while, and so now this is a positive externality that gets to sort of have ripple effects. But oftentimes there are so many of these ideas that don't get taken forward because of a bunch of sort of sometimes misconceptions, sometimes burnt fingers, oftentimes a lack of bandwidth. And these often stop people from who are driven to make change, but then they pause, they hold back, they sort of relegate it for a future time, right? Like some of the common myths we usually hear are that, you know, you need to have a very big idea, it needs to be this new light bulb idea that will change how things are currently run, or you need a lot of people, or the opposite also, that you need to be someone who is so driven, who has so much time and resources at your disposal that you can make change happen. It varies depending on that person's capabilities and what their situation is, but it's always something very different from what their situation is. If you have a lot of friends, then you need to have, you know, a lot of willpower and a lot of bright ideas. If you don't have friends, then it becomes, I need a community to get started, I can't just do anything on by myself. Sometimes it's like, we need to solve a problem, like you said, right? A lot of times you just need to have a conversation about issues that you're facing to even get to the, you know, the stage of finding a viable solution, right? It doesn't automatically come overnight. So I feel like these myths, and we've discussed this before in earlier conversations as well, that these myths often hold people back. And I remember you talking about how in instances you found that these myths don't hold true at all, and there's always an outlier or many outliers who are, in spite of these myths, making things happen.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, a lot of reading clubs, right? I don't know if you remember. In fact, Jayaja runs something called Bring Your Own Book, right? So, BYOB. So it started very small. I don't think we need to have like a disruptive idea to bring a community in action. Just the fact that there is fire in just initiating something like this. And I think most people are hung up with numbers, Shreya. Like you feel that a community means a sizable number. I would say most people would have started it really small. Maybe that community just grows over time. But having that as a precursor to say, oh, if I have to start, I have to have like 100,000 people is a little
Unreasonable.
Unreasonable. And sometimes having a tight knit group also brings out some really interesting outcomes, because people, how to work that relationship out, you play on their strengths, all of that happens. So I would say it's useful to have this view of having interested and invested people rather than look at that number, like having a room full of people versus people who can actually bring in questions that we should really think about and have read enough about it, is a good starting point. So I don't think you need to really have something super cool to start. Anything that you care about, like I've had friends who have difficult situations with some health condition of somebody whom they love, and they don't have support groups. So I'm like, you should create one, because I'm sure there are people sitting out there just not thought about it, or they don't have the time, or they felt they were probably unique in that sense. But once you create a community, you know that people who kind of relate to it will sign up, will be there, and then you also find that their experiences contribute to how you shape your thinking about the problem, and you're not alone in that fight.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yes.
People who connect with what you're trying to do find you, and the step is to take a step. I think we say it at Takshashila, no? If
Yes.
you want to start something, do it yourself, and then the
Yeah.
right people will find you.
Yeah. But just laying out certain rules to keep that place a little more disciplined in terms of not bringing in other noise into that system, I think there is merit in that. So be it our alumni groups, even the kind of apartment complex I belong, all of these places, we have set some ground rules, and those are useful. Anytime you induct a person, you kind of go over the values of that system, so that that's not breached.
So since you're part of many such communities, right, in different areas of work and focus, what are some sort of these sort of guidelines we can have? Because one thing that, not to generalize, but one thing that's common in the change making and impact spaces, we're kind of lax with guidelines, rules. It's almost like the opposite of the corporate. That sort of spirit comes. Of course, it's can't generalize. There are many firms that are going having like a strong purpose with good boundaries and guidelines. But what are some things that usually work?
So one is when you start off, like I said, have something which are non-negotiables, and that could come with people who are initiating it, right? So take any sort of community, you kind of need to set that, so that it kinds of gives you the path of ensuring you're not compromising on this no matter what. Okay, and this should be your right act of also being able to let go of people if they don't align with it, right?
So that's a tough call.
Yeah, but setting that expectation is something one must do, because otherwise people will be like, oh, I didn't know I'm signing up for this, right? So you need to kind of go through that process, and it's okay to give time for people to come back, because there are a lot of people, when you kind of tell them the ground rules or talk about why it was started, and then what is it that we kind of stick to as a protocol, sometimes people probably feel very different about it, and they might not be able to relate to it, and that's fair. But just ensuring that you are signing up for these ground rules is important. Then see, what holds the whole system together is the thing that, I belong to this community, and there is enough give and take. So you can't just lurk around in that system and take the benefits out of it, but it's important to keep adding to things, right? Whatever could be that contribution. It could be a writing club, it could be, like I said, in music or sketching, but not contributing, not giving feedback. Maybe people want some feedback on what they've written or any of these things. I feel that is what holds that system together, and it should be enough give and take, and the more you invest in the community, you see a better out of it coming. Result, right? So that's important. And also in terms of the rhythm, right, you need to also make sure that there is some sort of structure in physical meetups, or even catching up as a community. It could be quarterly, monthly, whatever works well for that community, but having some sort of structured approach to it helps, so that everybody has headspace, mind space for it, so that when you meet next, you have to come and probably talk about what you have done, or even have those right questions in terms of saying, okay, where are we heading, or ask tough questions of why certain things were not done like the way we had planned. So that rhythm and discipline is important. And then the circles, right, what roles each one of them plays has to be clarified well, because it's important that you tell people to dawn into different roles, so that they get the experience of being there. And once one is there, they understand the challenges better, and the solutioning and the track for what next kinds of follows through well, and create that journey for people, right? Always that experience is something that's special when you have gone through that journey of keeping people together, building it together, all of that, right? So for some people it could be a very metric driven thing, but for me, building a community has always been a little fuzzy in terms of metrics. Like, I can't point about a few things the community has benefited. Like, for example, I take so much pride in the community that I live in, that we've just been like, so well knit in terms of pitching in for a lot of difficult circumstances that people go through. And we've found a way to kind of be there for each other. And it's all the more easy because we're all physically there in that space most of the time. So it's not like you have to take extra 10 steps to step in for somebody. So I feel these are things you can't put a number to, but these are like great things to have.
Yeah, I'm as you're speaking, I'm contrasting it with how sometimes it's also right. Change making has become very much about numbers right now.
Yeah.
Most now impact assessment itself is such a big thing, and we're so numbers are important, but in areas like this where it's a community focused long term sort of a lens that you have, where you're building this community, nurturing it, also being ruthless about cutting out people who are sort of not in that journey with the group, it becomes hard to quantify. If you have that thing, then there will be a trade off of, okay, but how do I now give numbers? So there has to be that sort of vision also, right, where
Yeah.
you're in it for the long game. You're hoping to get out as much for yourself and for everyone, instead of just signaling to the world that yes, this is something I'm doing. There needs to be a change from that sort of I'm doing this versus we are all collectively doing this, and we will get there in time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's important to give space for people also, because in the communities that I belong, a lot of times I do take a break because I'm kind of caught up with other things. So I've kind of told people that for the next quarter, I'm kind of busy with something else. So I will slow down. So there is some level of trust that, you can place in that system. So you kind of take that break and come back, and then you probably contribute better. So those things have also worked, but more in the metrics part of it, something that we have tried at Takshashila, Shreya, is more of, we use some frameworks that we've kind of read and learned about. One is the Sarnoff's law, and then there's Metcalfe's law and the Reed's law. So Sarnoff is something where you kind of, the value of that network grows linearly, right? Something in the context of how a TV or radio would bring about change with the visuals or what they're talking about at that time, right? One to many in some sense. But
Right.
the Metcalfe's law is what the value grows exponentially, and as users, you connect with each other. It could be in through phone or through internet, wherever, but it kinds of grows in a multiplier level. But the Reads one is something where the subgroups kind of form their own communities to kind of pick up something totally different from what the core group has
Like a
started.
ripple effect.
Ripple effect, yeah. So say for example, at Takshashila we have alumni who've gotten together after the workshop that we've had, after the course, they've gotten together to start their own podcast, no way connected to what we do, but that's like such a good change to bring about, right? And a couple of them have gone on to do research together. So these are like something that they take on by themselves. So you just enable the system. So the system should be such that, even if one person is out of that system, very core member, the system should still grow.
That's so amazing. I'm sure these are only two of the examples. I'm sure there are multiple such examples that you get to hear from alumni, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes like capturing it also so difficult, because these are their lived
Yeah.
lives and realities, and there's no way we can know everything about it. But again, yet again, this is so different from how we usually think about change making. It's very founder focused, very like my vision first. This is very refreshing to also hear from, I think, Takshashila's and your journey as well, the team's journey as well, in how we've built a community of change makers. So given all this, right, what are some challenges you still see in change making?
So I think people have some ambitious goals when they form communities, and sometimes they're very stiff about it, right? So, I thought I'm going to grow this community to X number, or I would want it to be in different locations, or things like that. So sometimes the communities are meant to be small and powerful, right? So I feel if you're caught up in the game of just being very metric driven about it, it might be a little tricky. But for most people, they see value in having a long tenure community setup, which grows on to be such that people take on from there, and you would nowhere see the team which actually gotten started, right? It kinds of grows because when new people come, there are new ways of doing things, new ideas step into the fold of it. So even like in the apartment I have told, we have kind of built a nice system where elderly care, right, there's a little bit of a helpline within the community for the tech issues that they face. And then you can just put out a message and call people for like you can draw together, you can sketch together, you can read together. So just that there are a couple of people doing the same thing around you keeps you going in many ways. But if you have to do it by yourself, it needs some level of being
Yeah,
driven, right?
agreed.
So a lot of times people draw strength from that. So we've done clay building exercise, so we've learned from each other's professional experiences. So it's so much of giving plus benefiting out of it. So I would say as much as a community or an apartment is also a reflection of the country, right? So there are a lot of ways we've kind of incorporated some tested failed kind of things as well, but a lot of it work only because it's also very collaborative. We bring in ideas, we ask people, what would you like to kind of see in this community happening? So it's very collaborative, and like I said, people take on those different roles, so it's not like one person has to do it all. So that's what I think is useful, and not to be very rigid about
Rigid.
things, because it keeps evolving, right? And you need to have that flexibility, then it kind of falls in place beautifully.
Awesome. Soumya, this is a great space to, I think, also pause for today. But you've given us so much to think about, which is so many things to keep in mind for current and future change makers in our audience today, right? If I can summarize, to be collaborative, to look at it from a long range lens, to let people pick their roles or to give them roles that they also want to do. So that way, that vision also will keep building with the community. These are all really important things to keep in mind. The three laws was very good: one to many versus then it growing exponentially and then super exponentially when they form multiple tiny communities themselves. That, I mean, to not have a very proprietary, you're part of my community, don't do things on your own, feed into this more. This is all very counterintuitive, but to have that sort of a free hand where people can do their own things, right? This has been super valuable to also listen, especially from personal experience. Um, I hope this was super valuable for listeners as well. Any final thoughts?
No, I think more communities should exist and stay, and we will see the merit of it only in the long term. But I think staying on it is the fun of it.
Thank you so much, Soumya, for this conversation. Hope
Thanks,
this was
Shreya.
valuable
Yes.
to listeners. Folks, I also want to quietly plug in the GCPP here for potential future change makers. If you want to learn about policy analysis, economic reasoning, and how to think about some of India's biggest problems or more pervasive problems, please do the GCPP. It is a group of passionate change makers and also part of the larger Takshashila network, where, like Soumya said, a lot of change happens in smaller groups and in very interesting ways. So a new cohort starts in Jan, and we'll see you if you be part of it. Otherwise, we will stop here, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, Shreya.
Thank you, Soumya.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.